Yeah, warm welcome from our team at Catalyst. And just as always, a few bits of housekeeping before we get started on today's topic. So as always, you're on listen only mode, so you can see and hear us. And as you're doing, you can communicate with us via the chat panel. So please feel free to continue during the session as well. I would also just point out the session is being recorded, as you probably heard, so it will appear on our YouTube channel next week. So if you're not signed up to our YouTube channel, I would say have a look at that, because there's a whole host of resources over the last eight and a half years as we've been recording sessions. So do have a look there. And I think the final thing is always just I suppose an observation. We know we can't multi-focus rather than multitask. So just an encouragement to shut down any other applications so you can really be present for this dialogue as well today. So as you can see on the screen, I'm really delighted to be joined by some of our partner team at Catalyst 1.4. So Janie, Liz, Nish, and Boaz. So all partners at Catalyst, all members of our faculty team, so as well as training coaches, also operate as one-to-one coaches themselves as well. And so today the topic is really about being an executive coach. And this topic came as a request from our alumni in terms of wanting to hear from experienced coaches and really understanding some insights and some learning that they've had in their practice. So it's going to be a dialogue today. So we're going to be having a dialogue around this topic. So it will be free flowing. And as we're working online, just to say, hopefully not, but we might come in a couple of times at the same time. But we'll see. So I know I was thinking about how many years coaching experience we got between us, but then I decided not to go there. A
Lots is
lot.
probably the word, yes.
Yeah. So, being an executive coach, the intent of this dialogue is for us to share experiences, insights, reflections that we've had. And before we started, Nish, I know we contracted that you're going to kick us off with a reflection.
Yeah.
So I'm going to come to you. What would you like to share?
So I was thinking about this, Damon, and I had the benefit of supervision with you this morning, which got my mind working. And having coached for over 20 years in different guises, I often still come back to how much I do or don't trust myself in the moment. And I kind of think for me, it's concentric circles that get kind of closer and closer to that level of trust and being able to go with what's going on in the moment. But there is something about noticing when I'm off kilter and actually kind of reconnecting with who I know myself to be and who I am at my best. That makes a big difference. And I can feel it in a coaching session. I can feel when I'm kind of being drawn into a whole bunch of limiting thoughts or limiting beliefs or noise. And so kind of I think it's been a regular theme of our supervision that I come back to. But I love having the opportunity to anchor back. And I know then when I go back out again into coaching conversations, I start from a different place. So just for me, a big bit of it is recognizing, I guess, who I am as a person and therefore how that shows up in who I am as a coach and getting more and more comfortable with that. That's been a big part of my journey.
Mm. Well, just adding and doing the work, Nish, because obviously you said supervision this morning, but your ongoing practice to really, work through that for yourself, continue to work on your sense of congruence and that trust.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly important because I love what I do, but I want to feel like I'm doing it to the best of my ability, and that edge is always moving. So it's never something where I feel like I'm resting, and I like that. I like being able to learn, and actually, being in conversation with the rest of the partner group. That's always space for me to do that.
And it's lovely, isn't it? Because that's effectively what we are inviting those that we work with to do too, to kind of meet their learning edge and work through that and develop. And that's what I enjoy as an executive coach, that I kind of get to do that with other people, and at the same time I get to do that for myself, because there'll be things that are going on for me in my life in the sessions. There'll be things going on for the clients in their lives in the sessions, and it's a lovely opportunity to explore and kind of play with what comes up.
And then just building on that is making me think, I did a masterclass on Friday around coaching confidence, and what came out of that was as a coach, it's having that, giving yourself permission to feel vulnerable. You know, because if we can be vulnerable as coaches, we lead the way for our coachees to be vulnerable, you know, and to really push against their learning edge, you know. But I think we as coaches have to be prepared to go there first, and perhaps share that, you know, in terms of our vulnerability, and we're not perfect and we're not going to get it right and we don't have all the answers. And, you know, even sharing, you know, with someone, you know, if they're stuck, you know, sometimes that brings up stuckness in us as coaches. And actually I remember the first time it was really scary saying that. I thought, they're going to judge me. Are they going to say, oh my goodness, I don't want to work with you. You know, you're supposed to have all the answers, you know. But sharing, you know, I just noticed, as you say, stuck, I'm noticing I'm feeling stuck. And actually it led to a really much more impactful conversation, you know, insights for them. It really deepened their learning. So I think there's something around that as well.
And I just want to add, because I think, you know, first time I was invited to work with an executive, you know, we can put a lot of pressure on ourselves, you know, in terms of being an executive coach and working at a senior level within an organization. But I think the realization was, I soon saw that actually they were bringing the same vulnerabilities as a lot of my other clients were, but actually, you know, so actually having this safe space where they can explore who they are as you know, a leader within the organization, and these insecurities that we're sort of touching on here was very normalizing for me, because I think, you know, moving into being at and working as a partner to someone senior in an organization, I think I started to put some expectations on myself around what they were going to be wanting to work on, you know. So it was a really lovely piece of learning for me in terms of, you know, meeting them as a human being rather than the job role, you know.
Yeah.
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 Damien, I can't remember. I'm as you know, I can remember things, but not who said it. But as I'm sure someone we used to work with used to say, we're all human beings in training, and I really like that as an idea. So, and I when I was reflecting, like a bit like you, Nish, I was thinking the thing I think I have got better at is just noticing stuff. So noticing what might be going on for me, noticing and encouraging in my clients what they might be noticing without judgment, with curiosity. Because to your point, Nish, that edge does keep moving. So as a human being in training, I'm still challenged by things and pushed out of my comfort zone and meet things I haven't met before in myself and in others. And so that yeah, that ability to just notice and trust. I think particularly for me, the somatic work that we've done, sort of trusting that sort of physical sensation is one of the things that I've definitely has grown as a result of the work. And then to stay curious about it.
What kind of
And to be kind to myself, because I don't always apply it skillfully in everyday life.
Yeah. And I know that in those moments where I'm feeling less grounded, where I often go back to techniques and models, and I kind of hide behind, you know, all the techniques and those kind of things, and then I lose myself, you know. So part of my learning has been actually to notice what's going on, and if I'm going towards doing coaching, how do I kind of anchor myself back towards, you know, who am I, what am I noticing, what's going on between myself and the other person, what's going on for them. And it comes back to that Carl Rogers quote, you know, kind of know all the techniques, know all the ideas, but as you meet another human soul, be just another human soul. And it's a powerful, you know, it's a powerful thing to learn.
I always think there's real power in sharing that noticing. I was thinking, kind of just linking what you said, Liz, to what Janie was saying before. I always think it's interesting when in a coaching conversation, you notice how you're feeling or something that's going on in the room, and just name it with data. And you know, to your curiosity point, it's without judgment, you put it into the room, and what it can sometimes do for the whole dynamic between you and the person that you're coaching if you offer it without interpretation. So, you know, I remember in a coaching session saying to somebody, I'm feeling a bit foggy. And I just left it, and kind of their experience of fog came straight, you know, they just picked up on it, and they came back with how they're experiencing fog and what fog was meaning for them in their organization. And it was part of me at that point in time thought, I'm feeling foggy. Does that mean that I'm not doing a good job because I can't clarify through everything they're saying where to go next? And then I remember somebody saying to me, well, it's data, use it. And I was astounded at what happened when I just gave it as a bit of data without feeling the need to take it to the next step. And I think that's another bit of learning is kind of, sometimes it doesn't take much to kind of just open up a little bit more for your coachee, and then they can pick up the baton and take it somewhere quite important and meaningful for them.
Yeah, and one of the things, I mean, Nish, you and I go back a few years to our initial training, and those who are on the call who've done any sort of CPD session with me will at some point will have heard me say, you know, trust what's going on, trust the process, trust yourself and your client. Something interesting will emerge, and I go back to that all the time, that, you know, something interesting will emerge if you stay really present to what's going on in that moment. And then, as you say, trusting to just offer it and see. And I think that's been another big learning of just having the number of times I go back to that. In fact, I was supervision on Friday. I was supervising with a group and had such a lovely instance of that, of, you know, coaches talking about this. We're all wondering where that's going. And then suddenly, here's the thing that they really want to talk about. You just have to stay with it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Go for it, Janie.
No, I was just agreeing.
I was going to say, it reminds me of this idea of uncertainty and how we're really wired for certainty. And I know myself, you know, I like certainty, I like knowing. And often our clients will bring things to us where they're not sure, they don't know. And often there's really rich exploration in thinking about and exploring what's it like not to know. And what's it like for us as coaches not to know? Because I know I really, really want to go towards certainty. I really want to go towards, you know, knowing the answer. And actually, can we allow ourselves that space to play without making us feel inadequate, not enough, Nish, to kind of your point. You know, so we're foggy, we're noticing some fogginess. Can we put it out there and just sit with the uncertainty of where it will go, knowing that we're adding something into the soup? You know, when we meet people, we create soup together, and we're all going to taste it. But if we kind of tell people what the ingredients are that we put in, we've got a better chance of knowing what we're going to be tasting.
Well, and I just want to sort of make some connections with some of the earlier points as well, because I think in those moments we get to experience the coachee's patterns in terms of how they relate to uncertainty. And so again, I think for some of my clients, if they're sort of senior leaders, they don't often have someone that's willing to give them some honest feedback about what they're noticing or what they're experiencing. From a place of good intent, because this is about the coachee, it's not about me. But I think sometimes, you know, their old triggers and patterns come out in those moments where it is less certain, where perhaps they might try and control things very tightly, or perhaps direct something, and actually having a coach that's willing to notice that, share an observation, and then help them become aware of what you're experiencing. I think it's such a skill, I think, that we learn as coaches, and that's why feedback is such a skill that I think we're continually focusing on and refining in terms of when we're working with someone, because it's not something they hear often at their level, you know.
Actually, that's just, I'm connecting that actually to Nish, where you started, of Because I know when we're working with people on our programs, sometimes those moments of feedback can be quite hard, because, you know, to be able to hear them and not go to a place of judging yourself or thinking you're not enough as a coach can be quite hard. So I think that's the other, for me, it's been a place of learning to be able to hear or to have those kind of honest conversations, hear the feedback from a client and engage with it. Almost like I mean, you talk sometimes about rupture and repair, you know, that it's a moment of real honesty. And if you can stay with that moment of real honesty with a client, it almost always results then in a better relationship. But I mean, so as I'm talking, I can remember a couple of moments which were really, you know, sort of moments of, oh, you know, ouch. But can I stay with it? Because there's gold in it if I can stay with it with the client.
So I suppose we're talking a lot about in the moment and emergence and presence and the way we're holding and meeting the client. I just wonder what else have we learned about, or what insights have we had about being an executive coach that we'd like to share?
I think the other thing, Damien, when I was reflecting is I think I have learnt to be better at still a work in progress, perspective. So I think I've learnt to be better at stepping back from things, which is particularly useful in my personal life, which is why it's still a work in progress. But there have been times, I think, when I've felt really challenged by something, and the ability to just step away a bit and see it in a more systemic, from a more systemic perspective, I would say has been one of the, a place of real learning, which has been really helpful as a coach and really helpful elsewhere too. And of course, it's one of the things that we're often doing with our coachees is to help them just take a step back. And often that is something that coachees reflect on, I think, is almost like an unexpected outcome, is just the ability to just create that bit of distance. So that's certainly something that I sort of paused and thought about, which doesn't mean that I don't still get caught in it, because I definitely do.
Yeah, and just a bit more, Liz, how are you doing that then? Just because I'm sure people are wondering how you create that step back.
Well, so I mean, certainly, you know, we have done a lot of work systemically, so that helps to just keep exercising that muscle of looking from a more systemic perspective and I suppose engaging with the idea that we are all connected. And so whenever we step into working with a client, we metaphorically step into, well, not metaphorically, we step into their system. And so we start acting on it, but it also starts acting on us. So I think there's something about I think it's probably one of the most powerful bits of training I've done as a coach. It's aside from some of the initial training, is that systemic perspective. And then personally, I think there have just been moments where I felt really challenged by something, of when I'm able to stepping out and realizing it's not personal. This isn't just, you know, you're not that special, Liz. You know, there is a wider system acting here, and you just happen to be the person that it's acting on in this moment, but there are others. So again, it's that ability to just see a bigger perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it's a link, but I think one of the things that I really learned, to my detriment initially, was, you know, coaching can be quite a lonely business at times, you know. And in the early days, I wasn't making use of when I had a supervisor that I would go to once a month, but I didn't necessarily have people around me that I could go to if I needed to take that step back, Liz. I suppose that's where that thought has led me to. So I think one of my real learnings has been, you know, to make sure I've got people around me. And luckily, you know, not that we necessarily talk about specific clients, but if I'm holding something, I know I've got colleagues that I can I can turn to and reflect on something. I've got, a supervisor, I've got a coach that I work with. So there are people I have around me that really keep me fit for practice. And I think that's really important, because without that, I wouldn't be able to notice that it's not just my stuff, there's something here that's really useful for us to pay attention to. Yeah.
And I think that's been one of my big learnings as well. And even, as you said, having a supervisor or have colleagues around, but there's something about what I've really appreciated as us as a group. We've been having learning conversations sort of more recently, and just not about, it's not about learning a new topic or a new area. It's been about what are we noticing in our work, and just having the space to have those conversations. I find them so rewarding. They've really helped my learning and growth as a coach. And I don't think I took advantage of that. There was almost a sense of, I didn't have, I was working by myself and working with clients, and there wasn't that, I didn't make use of that network, because I felt there was a sense of, I felt I had to get it right. I had to be perfect. I had to have the answers. So to be vulnerable and say, actually, I'm finding this client tricky, or this is going on, or I've read this book and it's really interesting. It's made me think about this. What have you thought about it? All those kind of rich conversations that you have just build. And I think that would be if I was giving anyone advice who's starting out, it's like build a network of I don't know what you call them, your executive board or something. If you wanted to call it something, fancy, but have some friends that are in this business that are doing what you do, that you can have interesting conversations with, because it really will help you in terms of your practice, but also just in your enjoyment as well, I think.
Struck between the parallels, we talk about lonely and feedback, and there's a lot of parallels, I think, between working as an executive coach and also the executives that we work with. And the number of times I hear from people that I work with how lonely it is to be in their role. And actually, Janie, as I was listening to you, I was thinking, I've got these people around me, but do I turn to them? Do I have the conversations about there's a lot of that paralleling. And I think kind of what that does for me as a coach is it means that there's permission and space to really partner in those coaching conversations with people who otherwise don't have access to someone who helps them to slow down and then speed up again more consciously. And seeing that humanness, seeing the permission we have actually to raise stuff in a way that nobody else will do for them.
Yeah.
Of intent with which we're able to do that. It's just opened up doors over the years that I've been coaching. I think initially when I started coaching, I thought my role was to be the smartest person in the room and spot the gaps. And, I've come a long way from there in terms of, I kind of often see my role as being vitamin D, for a sunflower. If I can, I'm a bit of sunshine. But actually, I'd like to think that anyway. But actually, I think kind of coming back in again, almost close to that, but on another level. I think I and we have a role to play in kind of being that kind mirror and source of support in a way that a lot of executives don't get otherwise, and kind of they're sitting an awful lot of potential, at the edge of an awful lot of potential, kind of that they just don't have a visibility in terms of the choice they have around that.
Which actually takes me back to almost the start of our conversation, which is, if we're inviting our clients to work at their edge and we're being taken to our edge, the importance of the work we do on self, and whatever form we choose to do that in, the importance of the work on ourselves.
Yeah.
And the investment in that, and recognizing that's part of our license to practice.
Yeah.
So sort of time is flying, actually. Notice time. So maybe we just continue with a bit of sort of more applied sort of experience in terms of any other advice we would give people stepping into, this profession as an executive coach. Or I can see a question from Amandeep about navigating the transition into an executive coach.
I think it's a great question. It's hard to answer in a way, because we'll each have had our own way, and each will have had our own journey. and we haven't got time to share all the different ones. I do think, Damien, your point about it can be lonely, and so certainly for me, when I started off, I knew I needed to be with others in some way, that I didn't just want to be a practicing independent coach, that I needed to do other things as well. And there was an element of just doing things, going to meet. I mean, you and I met years ago, and in a way it just happened. So there was something about just creating lots of possibilities and opportunities, and then following the ones that felt like a good match for my values. And I certainly think, I mean, we often say the thing that draws us all together as a group of partners is that we share the same values around the work. So even though our backgrounds are very different and our passions for some of the work we do and what informs that work are different, we have a similar set of values. So I think that's always been for me a guiding principle of working with other people who share a set of values.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to come in because I've seen a couple of reflections about coaches may disqualify themselves because they don't have C-suite experience. I think, of course, that's an interference, you know. So I didn't have C-suite experience, but what I know now after many years of coaching is that's my clients don't look for that. Yes, in the early days, I think HR managers may have asked about my organizational experience, but I'd say when the client's sitting in front of me, one, there's a sense of are we the right fit, but they're more interested in how I can support them to do their best thinking. I really believe that. And I don't think any of my clients came to me because of my organizational experience. They come to me because of my ability to help them reflect in a deep way, you know. So I think there is a bit of a disconnect there, but I think my experience is more and more these days is that's less of a question. We're more focused on our capacity to challenge and create insight in the coachee. I don't know if you would agree with that, but that's my reflection seeing those comments come through.
I mean, I think experience is only part of your authority, and it's almost how do you carry that and show up, how your presence is informed by your authority. And so actually how you show up in presence and in conversation can create the dynamic that you want, regardless of where somebody sits in a hierarchy, particularly if you look at them person to person.
Yeah, because I mean, authenticity comes from authority, same root meaning, isn't it? But for me, it's about our capacity to hold that space when we're in relationship with them, rather than any corporate experience that I've had. You know, of course, there's something about understanding their world, but at the same time, it's for me that capacity for us to hold the space and facilitate the process for them. You know. Any final reflection about any advice, actually? Anything anybody hasn't shared so far? We've got a couple of minutes.
I guess just the final piece for me is that we're all really different coaches as well, and you will all find your own style and create your own style as you go through the process. So you might find that there's a particular sector you enjoy working in with, or you enjoy working with people at particular parts of their career journeys, and that's fine. You know, the fact that we all coach differently is fine, and I think it's part of what makes coaching so interesting.
So we're fast approaching time. I'm sure we could stay on this session for another 2 days probably. But I just want to say I hope there's some useful reflections for the group in what we've shared today. You know, and we will continue dialogues around these topics, I'm sure. So thanks to everyone for joining. Look forward to connecting again soon. And thanks for your reflections in the chat panel as well. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Go
Take
well.
care, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Goodbye.